All right. I just opened the doors. I see folks are starting to get in through Zoom. We're going to give everyone a few minutes here. Just as folks are coming in, I want to kick things off by saying, welcome to LinearB's Beyond Copilot webinar today. We have a lot of registrants, and I see folks are still joining, so give us just a few minutes to get everyone into our virtual auditorium. But as everyone gets in here, I want to know a little bit about y'all. So can we kick things off with like an icebreaker? I really want to see the chat blow up so I know people are here. Maybe give us an emoji of how you're feeling this morning or this afternoon from wherever you're joining us. Just kick things off. I see a smiley face already. That's a great start. I'm going to see if I see my favorite emoji in the chat. So just go ahead and blow it up. I want to see people as they come through the door, give us a shout out. Okay, great. This is awesome. I'm seeing folks from all across the world. I'm seeing some good emojis here. I still have not seen my favorite emoji, so I will say that it's all fair game here. Okay, great. Wow. The troll emoji, that's a great one. Okay, nice. Great. So we have folks from all across the country, all across the world, even. We have emojis. Everyone's feeling pretty happy overall. And then just as the last few folks get in through the door, we start warming up here. Maybe even share your favorite AI tool with the chat. I know this is an AI-focused discussion. I know everyone has AI on the brain. So as we get the chat blown up here, I want to see emojis. I want to see where you're from. I want to see your favorite AI tool. Really, I want to see the chat blow up. And so as things scroll by, if you see great things, I want you to react to them. We have a great lineup today with some amazing guests, and I'm going to go ahead and start walking us through some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. So now that our virtual auditorium is filling up and we're warmed up, let's get things started. My name is Andrew Zigler, and I'm the Senior Developer Advocate at LinearB. I'm also the host of Dev Interrupted, and every Tuesday we deliver a podcast and newsletter featuring real stories, struggles, and strategies behind high-performing teams. You can check it out by searching Dev Interrupted, but today we're focusing on a report from LinearB. Prior to today's workshop, we emailed you the DevEx Guide to AI-Driven Software Development report. It's 24 pages that are packed with insights, some of which we're covering today. So be sure to check out the report if you haven't already, but you can follow along here if you haven't read it yet. Don't worry, there's not any homework for today's discussion. It's based on a survey of over 400 engineering leaders, developers, and software engineers. So we're going to be diving into some of those learnings today. And we're going to do that by looking at three key questions. What does AI look like in the software development lifecycle beyond Copilot adoption? How do I measure the impact of my assisted development rollouts? And how do I experiment with AI in a responsible manner? So keep these things in mind as we start moving through our discussion today. But you're not going to be hearing about it from me. We have some incredible guests, three amazing software engineering experts from companies that are practically household names. We're joined by Suzie Prince, the head of product for Compass at Atlassian, a company with a staggering impact on the software industry and #1 on the Future 50 list. We're also joined by Birgitta Böckeler, the global lead for AI software delivery at Thoughtworks, which drives extraordinary impact on the world through cultural and technological excellence. And we're joined by Adnan Ijaz, the director of developer agents and experience at AWS, notably behind Amazon Q Developer, which has been found to save countless developer hours. And Birgitta and Adnan have actually both been guests on Dev Interrupted, and we're looking down to sitting down with Suzie in the near future as well. But before we dive in to all of our discussions, let's actually look at the data and start things off with a reality check. Where is AI actually showing up across the software development lifecycle? And this chart from our report gives us a snapshot across nearly 400 engineers and their teams. And they're all across different size companies. We're talking about startups and scale-ups and enterprises. And some of their answers about how they're using AI in their software development lifecycle may surprise you. So as you look at this kind of chart of where AI is being used in the SDLC, let's make sure we understand all the pieces here. So software has to move from left to right. You're talking about project planning, requirements and architecture, coding, and then being reviewed and released. And each of those stages have their own very distinct needs and processes involved with them. The way that AI is getting adopted is not even across all of those parts. So you can imagine this almost like a river. The software has to flow from left to right. And in some parts, the river's really deep, so it can flow really fast. But in other parts, the river's really shallow. So that's where you get things like bottlenecks. I want you to keep bottlenecks in mind because they're going to be an important part, an anchoring part of our discussion today. So bringing us to our discussion for the day, we really want to analyze it by looking at three key questions. And I'm going to open it up with the first one. This is what we introduced at the beginning of our slides of what does AI in the SDLC look like beyond Copilot adoption? Specifically, what are the opportunities to pilot agentic AI in critical workflows? And this is looking at part of the workflows that has a really low adoption, actually. And this is in requirements and architecture. So I'm going to open things out to our guests here, looking at this particular part of the SDLC and how AI is used. I'm wondering what comes to mind for y'all about the opportunities here, or maybe what does this data show us about how AI is used at this stage?
I'm happy to get started if that's okay, Andrew, and
Yeah.
the rest of the panelists. I found this data to be super interesting. I think that a lot of the talk and the vibe around AI and software development is about what we at Atlassian call the inner loop. That's the coding part, the building part. But I think what we saw in your results, Andrew, is something that we are talking a lot about at Atlassian. Is there's a bigger challenge than just that moment of coding. Some of the stats I've seen is that 80% of coding time for a developer or the time that a developer spends is not coding. It's planning, it's documentation, it's reviews, it's maintenance. And I think that's what you're seeing here is there are opportunities across that full point to transform, different friction points in that life cycle. So we could think about, for example, for an organization to look at that life cycle and where are the biggest friction points for them. It may not be coding. It may be PR review, for example. It may be that you're, one of the things we've been piloting is we have lots of tickets and servicing, customer support tickets. How do we surface trends there? That might be an opportunity in terms of defining requirements or prioritization. So I think that the key thing here is that when we think about AI in the software lifecycle, it's not just about coding. Can an organization look at the entire lifecycle, find their friction, point themselves, and work there? I'd love to hear what the other panelists think about this.
Yeah, I'm happy to add to that. Spot on, and plus one to what Suzie said. I think a lot of early days of AI-driven software development was in the inline coding workflows. You're writing code, and AI is helping you complete the code faster. While it has been really valuable, and that is where we win a lot of traction early on with the AI tools, but coding is really a relatively small part of everything that developer does in the entire software development lifecycle. And similar to what Suzie said, at AWS, we're also taking a more holistic view of how do you look across all aspects of software development lifecycle, not just the coding aspect, and how do you actually remove the toil from that lifecycle? Because there are a lot of things that have to be done, but not necessarily really enjoyed by developers, or they don't love them. Or even there are things that can just be automated, like the documentation writing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a developer sitting there and even interacting with the AI assistant to write the documentation. It should just get done for them. So that is the right way to think about it. Is like, how do we actually move away from an autocomplete like functionality that AI has initially provided to a more agentic interactions? And to be fair, I mean, we're seeing that transition happening already. Like a lot of the customers that I talk to, more recently, their emphasis has been on how do they bring more agentic interaction into all aspects of software development lifecycle. Like, for instance, I'll give you a name like Deloitte reduced 70% of their unit test time using the agentic interaction. Like ADP used to do documentations in weeks, now it's within a day. So those are some of the examples on how people are using these agents more than just the inline coding workflow to all aspects of SDLC.
Yeah, also more a general comment on like beyond coding first. Like I saw somebody just mentioned theory of constraints in the chat. And so it's almost like we actually have to look at using AI for other things, because if we only increase the throughput of coding, like there's going to be pressure points all over the system, right? You can't just do that and not change anything else, right? And I've recently seen more and more stories that show like that the systems are kind of starting to creak, And like I read like a really good blog post by somebody called Galo Navarro, who talked about organizations who in the past have dealt with like big throughput increases just because of growth, like companies like Slack, for example, right? And how they all have to go through like a painful process of actually dealing with what that means for testing. And, if you have like a 10% month-on-month growth of your CI/CD throughput, like all of the things that start to creak and happen, right? So if you're not prepared for that as an organization, then you will run into trouble by just being faster and faster in the coding, but not changing anything else, right? But more specifically for the task that I mentioned here on the slide as part of the report, in terms of the requirements definition, I can also see like with our clients and also in the market, when you look at the types of tools that are coming up, that people are not quite like prioritizing these things yet, right? So it's like coding is the most obvious lever. So everybody's starting with that. And I don't hear as many stories about the requirement stuff, but I think a lot of like analysts, product owners, whoever is writing the stories are already doing it. And it's maybe not even that visible because you can just do that with an AI chat. You don't need a special tool, right? Like, I mean, Suzie, like, Atlassian Rovo or like all the features that you have can certainly help with that, right? But like, I think a lot of people are just doing it kind of like under the radar almost, right? And so I recently talked about this in a conference presentation, and I have a slide at some point where I gave people lots of examples, and I go like, does that seem a bit messy, right? Because you go from tool to tool, and you kind of edit a document, and it's very like, it kind of shows how Gen AI is just not this thing that we should put in a straitjacket and just always have like a tool on top of it, and this is exactly the process, but it's really like, serving us as a human in that sense. And in terms of like, how well it works. So I think can be a great starting point for requirements, but I've also seen like a lot of, let's say, pitfalls or like the same things that AI does wrong or that I want to correct all the time. Like it goes too broad too quickly and how it like breaks down my requirements. It always gives me work packages that are very technical. Like there's a work package or a user story like do QA or set up the persistence layer. And I want like a vertical cross-functional thing, right? So there's a lot of this in code as well, or in general, like Gen AI always trying to boil the ocean and creating too many details, right? Which can lead to all kinds of problems for us. And in terms of architecture decisions, somebody was also mentioning in the chat, it's a bit harder because of all the context needed, right? So definitely there's so much like trade-offs to consider in context and architecture. So what I've mostly tried is like to find ways how I can use Gen AI to help me think, right? So like maybe by helping me find like new methodologies or tools of thinking, mental models that I can use for my particular thing to find strengths and weaknesses in my architecture or something. And then maybe also to get it for me as a more experienced architect, how can I enable other people in the organization to do certain practices better, right? Like, for example, craft a prompt, how to help somebody write a better architecture decision record. Like, this is what the title should be like, or there should always be an option to not do anything, or, there's all kinds of like good practices for decision records. So how can I, as an experienced architect, kind of amplify that by giving them prompts? So those are just a few of the examples that come to mind with architecture and requirements.
Andrew, do you mind if I jump back in? I wanted to, because that made me really think of this idea that we hear a lot oh, AI will replace your workforce, then it will be your junior developers. And I think the one thing that I am personally feeling is less this is a junior teammate that I have, and more this is a sparring partner, which I think is what you were just talking about. How can it help me think through how to solve a problem? So rather than, yes, sort of regurgitating requirements that are frankly probably don't have the right context and may or may not, how can it help me as a product manager think through, well, this is the kind of problem I'm solving. What are the areas of requirement? Or, a great example is I'm not a designer, but sometimes words are hard and it's hard to explain what you mean. So my teams have been using prototyping with great effect to just, short circuit things. So I think it's less about taking over and really doing those jobs completely for you. In some cases, obviously it can, but and more about how can it help me think through problems, communicate, collaborate more effectively across that entire life cycle. And I think that's what we've all been sort of sharing here.
Yeah, and apply theory and mental models to my situation. So we don't have to look at a stranger's example that we then have to kind of relate to what we're doing. But like it helps me learn concepts faster by getting Gen AI to give me examples that relate to what I'm currently working on.
Yeah, this has all been a really great encapsulation of kind of when we opened the discussion and we looked at, I'm going to go back a slide, like the river, right, from left to right. Y'all all three made the really great point about you're going to create bottlenecks if you just have it over-adopted, overused in one area versus another. So I think that was a really key thing to dive into on this particular section. I also really agree with Birgitta about how in this stage, the AI you're using is probably creeping in through other tools and places that you're not necessarily instinctively thinking. It's not a different modality like opening an IDE. It's kind of more baked into all sorts of stuff you're doing. So that for that reason, there might actually be a stealthier, more amount of adoption here than we really see. So this has been a really interesting one to dive into about how teams are using it just beyond like the initial Copilot. And to move things along to our next question, I want to zoom in on the part of that graph that is the deepest part of the river where most stuff is going through, right? I think everyone can speak to this topic. Everyone's experienced it, and folks that have been using AI and at any point have probably been experimenting with it on this particular phase of creating software. But it brings us to our question of how do we measure the impact of a rollout like this, the impact of introducing AI-generated code into your code base, and how are enterprise leaders shifting that conversation from innovation to actually getting results out of this? Like we're making this part of the river really deep, but then what's the payoff? Is it worth it? Was this a good motion to go through? So I want to kick things off. Adnan, I see you already came off of mute, so I assume you're ready to go on this one.
I'm happy to jump in.
Okay.
I think they're really, when we think about the business outcomes of you having AI help you with the software development lifecycle, there are really two aspects that I generally focus on. One is the short-term gains, which is mostly at the individual developer productivity level. Like for instance, if you're using AI assistants, like how much code you're accepting that is recommended to you with slight modification, but it's helping you move faster. While moving fast is great, and I think that is where a lot of emphasis was in early days and still is, but it's really now the conversation is shifting from how does it help me achieve better business outcomes? So moving fast is definitely one of those outcomes, but better code quality, maybe reduce licensing costs, for instance, or better performance, because if you're able to go from one version to another. So the way to think about it, at least in my opinion, is you focus on both aspects, on the immediate gains, on how it is helping your developers more productive, not, as Suzie said earlier, not necessarily replacing them, because that is the wrong conversation and wrong way to think about it. How do you actually help them move faster? And so how do you improve the velocity of what they're doing? And then the outcome, the bigger business outcome, which requires looking at your processes and software development life cycles more holistically, like are developers able to generate more pull requests? Are they making fewer mistakes? Is the code more secure? And that is where you would see enterprises also start tracking metrics like, okay, how much how much defect rate did we reduce by rolling out this product? So it's really two layers of it. The individual productivity that you can look right away, and most of the tools will tell you like how much of the code that they recommended was accepted. The code acceptance, we certainly provide that in Amazon Q Developer, but then also the broader end-to-end workflow of how the essentially DevOps pipeline, like the defect rates, the velocity of the check-ins, and a whole bunch of different things. And that can lead to different business outcome depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, Adnan, I was actually on a panel recently, on another panel with one of your colleagues from AWS, and he said at some point, like, as a consumer, I'm wondering where all of these improvements are in the products that I'm using that supposedly are now all being built with AI. And I thought it was such a great way to look at it. Like at the moment as a consumer, all I see is like that I'm trusting websites and products less and less that just pop, out of the ground everywhere. And I'm like, I wonder if they vibe coded that. Can I trust that? Do I want to give that my data? So that's what I see as a consumer at the moment.
The one thing I was thinking about with regards to this one, and I think it goes with sort of the hairy subject of productivity overall. There's a strange thing to think about measuring people, right? And when you measure agents or agentic technology, maybe that feels easier, but one of the first things that comes to mind for me is measure the impact of your AI in your lifecycle as your teams. Your teams are using these tools. You are offering them as an enterprise leader to those people who are, the blood of your organization. Let's go ask them, are you finding them useful? Are you concerned about using them? What is blocking you from being more productive with these tools? I think that we quickly get to like wanting to be able to say it's 50% or 60%, all of these things because, quantitative measures feel like the right thing. But I think what we found at Atlassian, regardless of whatever tool or process improvement we're bringing out, the most important signal for us, if that is working, is to just ask our development teams, has this helped you? And I think that is kind of like your first line here for sure.
Yeah. Plus 100 to that, Suzie. Like, I think there's like so much energy wasted, frankly, right now on like, what is this percentage, right? Like how much faster, much more productive, as if you can like, express productivity in percentages, right? There's so much energy wasted on this right now when I think it's sufficient for us to have a feeling for the ballpark in our situation, and we can actually get that from developers, right? And also this percentage is kind of like hard even to say, because like as you start using coding assistants, people will start baking that into their estimations, right? So all of our numbers about speed are actually based on human estimation or human sizing of tasks, right? So it like all starts to lose meaning, right? So you have to just like ask, right? So I think we should actually spend all of that energy not on measuring how much faster we are, like to the percentage point, but instead we should spend that on measuring and monitoring is a better word, on monitoring code quality and quality impacts, because there are actually like first worrying signs about this. And there's like some simple things that we can do, which is just dust off the static code analysis and kind of like the basic hygiene level stuff that we already have, but often don't use because we have hubris as humans that we think our code is great, right? Because we looked at it all. And like tools like SonarQube, they can measure our like duplicate code level and stuff like that, right? Which is like one of the risks that has kind of like emerged in this data about that, right? Or like think about in our developer processes, what is our safety net, right? Like, for example, one of the code bases I contribute to right now where I use AI, we have like a pretty elaborate pre-commit hook that even is like integrated with like a security scanner, right? That looks for, a static code analysis for security things, right? And just, doesn't even let me push if it finds like a critical vulnerability, right? So there's all of these things where we can look at our safety net again, right? And generative AI amplifies indiscriminately, right? So if we have like an unsafe process and we have bad code and all of that, and we just put Gen AI on top of it, then, it's going to even amplify that, right? So yeah, I think we should like put all of that energy that we spend on speed and put it in risk monitoring.
I would quickly add to that. I think, Brigitta, I agree with your broader point on there is sometimes misplaced emphasis on measuring the overall organizational developer productivity. So there, both you and Suzie brought up, talking to developers. We certainly do qualitative surveys internally, and then get qualitative feedback to kind of gauge whether the tools like Amazon Q Developer, for instance, are helping developers or not. But I would say,
to be clear, I mean the speed. Like I think that's wasted energy just like looking on the speed, but it needs to be like a broader picture. That's what I mean.
Exactly. And I think what I've the organizations that I've worked with that I've seen do really well in measuring the impact is they really, instead of trying to revamp all their processes overnight and trying to measure everything overnight, they focus one narrow aspect of the problem that they're dealing with. Like, for instance, I mentioned earlier the documentation example from ADP. So you can come up with a use case, and that is a much more tractable problem. You can say, okay, generally we used to have unit test coverage which was at X, and now we are able to get to Y. And it's generally easier to measure versus saying that, hey, is my organization on moving faster, all of that. And ultimately, I think the tools will get there as organizations get mature. They will find better ways to measure the impact. But my experience has been, if you focus on one or two specific use cases, so essentially think big, but really start with incremental steps, because otherwise, if you think big and try to measure everything overnight, that is where you run into problem. And last thing I'll say, I saw a number of comments on the operational aspect, and somebody said that they generally struggle with doing diagnosis and troubleshooting with these tools. And I think that is where I'd go back to the earlier point I made about the agentic AI. That is where I think the shift from having AI assistant help you with autocompletes or just answering your question to really truly agentic interactions is meaningful. And I'll give you an example, and I'll keep it short, not to bore you guys. When we were building the agentic interactions in Q, Amazon Q Developer, I vividly remember this one. I was testing this Amazon Q CLI, which has all the agentic interactions, and I asked it to build a certain games, did the white coding, it built me a game, and all of that great things. And out of curiosity, I just say, hey, can you look at all my AWS deployments and tell me how many S3 buckets I have? And that was my prompt, and comes back and says, hey, I can do that for you, but you don't have the AWS CLI installed. Do you want me to install it for you? I'm like, go ahead and do that. And it just took me, with that simple prompt, took me all through steps, ultimately like did things along the way with my oversight and control. And it came back with a list of S3 buckets. I'm like, I don't remember creating this bucket. Can you tell me who created it, how it got created? And it went into that troubleshooting, debugging mode with me to see, okay, how it got created. And in about a few minutes, we kind of almost root cause what got created and what can we do with that. So that is a I would say, shift from having an AI assistant, which is just helping you with one aspect of coding or answering question, to really helping you perform actions. And that is true with the debugging, that's true with troubleshooting, and not just writing code. So I just wanted to speak to that because I think that is an important part of, and that you can also measure that. Like typically it would take you several hours to go figure out if an issue happens, but with the AI assistants you can get there faster.
And that's actually one that's also part of the risk monitoring, because there are also like some first signs that it takes people longer to debug because they don't know the code as much anymore, right? So you want to know, like, does the AI boost actually like balance that out? But yeah, definitely I've also had like really nice situations where it just went through exactly the steps I would usually take to debug, and I found issues much, much faster. Yeah.
Yeah, you were both describing it as that sparring partner that we touched on, because you both knew how to troubleshoot those scenarios and work through it. It just amplified that process, made it easier. And I something that will stick with me from this entire conversation will be, Birgitta, what you said about Gen AI amplifies indiscriminately, because that's so true here. It's like a force multiplier on the good and the bad, which is why you have to be so mindful about how you're implementing it, how your teams are using it. It also makes a lot of sense for why it's used so much here, because this is a stage where folks can really amplify the everyday work that they're doing, the contributing work, and also do that exploration, that figuring it out, because we've all accepted at this stage that it's hard to count and quantify. And going back to what you said about what do these numbers even mean anymore? They're based upon human estimates. Like, that's core to its truth. We're going to have to fundamentally re-envision how we discuss this entire process, which is what kind of part of what we're touching on here today. So to bring us to our third question, we're looking at how do teams experiment with AI in development in a responsible way. And when we say responsible here, that looks different for every organization. It really just depends on what you're doing, what you're building, how big your team is. But we're looking specifically at how teams and individual engineers are actually moving across this adoption process. So in the beginning, we looked at it as like a river, right? From left to right. Here, we're kind of folding it onto two axes. We're looking at on the Y axis here, who planned it, the AI or the human? And on the X axis, we're looking at who produced it, the AI or the human. And you can envision it like this. Everybody started in the bottom left corner before AI. We were down there doing our human process. We were planning things as humans. And now, over time, we're starting to move across the X-axis. The AI is producing things, and move along the Y-axis. The AI is planning things. So you can see here, this is based upon that same survey report that we're talking about, how folks are mapped across this adoption process. You kind of follow in different quadrants. They all have different names that you can see here. So I want to open up the floor to our panelists about our discussion topic around this for, how are modern teams like yours shifting to like AI-powered workflows, gaining a competitive advantage? Where do you see yourself and your teams on this chart? And how do you see folks that you deal with kind of move across this matrix? If anyone wants to open us up.
I have some thoughts. I'm happy to take a first shot.
Perfect.
So I wanted to first think about or talk about and see what the others think about the responsible manner. So I kind of have two maybe conflicting thoughts in my head. One is the experimentation part. It's just like we want our teams to be curious, right? I'm about to do a task. Could I achieve this task using AI? And I think that experimentation really that's the kind of thinking that we want modern organizations to bring, like everybody's going to be using this. And so we want to find out the best ways for a specific individual, for a specific process and organization. So we need to begin by being curious and experiment in those ways. But how do you experiment and be curious in lots of ways, also being responsible? And I think again about that idea that this is a junior teammate or a sparring partner. This is about you, a tool for you as an individual and your organization, but humans are still involved. And so when we think about responsibility, this isn't about just saying, well, the AI wrote it, so I give away all of my responsibility. We want transparency of what the tools are doing. We want human review. We want to be very thoughtful with our customer data. And so at Atlassian, we have like very clear guidelines about responsible use. We have guidelines around which tools we're allowed to use and which tools we are not. And I think those are the most important things, is to stop and think about, yes, be curious and start to experiment, but also really think about what am I trying to do here? And am I being a responsible user of those tools at this particular moment? And it's going to change over time, right? I can see every day inside Atlassian people asking for more access to more tools. I mentioned in the chat, we use Lovable, but we also want to use Bolt. We've used GitHub Copilot, but we also, want to use Codex as well. More and more organizations need to set themselves up for this process of allowing their teams to use it so that they can ensure that the use is responsible. Because I suspect the best, the people who want to be the best, they're going to find a way to use those tools anyway. So really setting yourselves up to encourage the curiosity, but be prepared to put some guidelines around that use as well. And have some examples of how we're using it, but I'd love to hear from the other panel members how they think about the sort of responsible use part. It can be tricky.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think there are two aspects of it. One is humans using the tools in a responsible manner, and really using their judgment to figure out when they can actually completely rely on this one, on the AI, versus when they have to actually inspect the things more closely. But I would say the second aspect is the tools themselves. Like, are they built with the responsible AI at the center? Like, for instance, is the tool that you're using, is it telling you the code reference tracker? Like, for instance, if it generates an open source code suggestion, can it tell you that, hey, here is the suggestion that came from the underlying LLM, but here is an accompanying license, or don't use this or use that? Is it filtering out, any bias suggestion, which for the most part, LLMs do really well. But then the other aspect could be security scanning. Like, for instance, if it's generating a code recommendation, or doing code reviews, or even generating documentation, is it actually scanning for any security stuff or any, I would say, non-standard practices that you shouldn't be using? So stuff like that. So there are really two aspects of it. It's like how much you're relying on the tool and taking the input from the tool to go about your day-to-day business, but then also selecting tools that have some of these responsible AI practices built in and give you the control to implement those guardrail around those recommendations.
Yeah, before getting to the responsibility part, like I want to build on what you said, Suzie, about people being curious and experimentation and all of that. Like I always talk about how I think like organizations right now need cultures that both reward the skeptics and the enthusiasts, right? So the enthusiasts need to pull the skeptics up, and the skeptics need to pull the enthusiasts a little bit down to earth. And so, for example, like if I'm an enthusiast, I shouldn't say to a skeptic, like, why are you not faster? You have AI now, right? Or the other way around, I shouldn't say to an enthusiast, why would you even try that? That's stupid. Gen AI cannot do that, right? So you shouldn't talk to each other that way. And like leaders should reward both of those things and have a good culture like that so we can figure it out, that out together, right? And also, part of responsible leadership right now is, I think, to not put these like overhyped pressures on teams, like you have to be faster now because you have AI, because then they're going to cut corners, right? And so I mentioned some examples before about quality problems, right? So if you put that pressure on, then people are going to find ways to be faster by gaming the metrics, by cutting corners, by whatever, right? So that's also part of being responsible leaders through this change, I think. And also responsibility means like literacy and knowledge to me as well, right? I still see so many like really technologists, developers who still do not fully understand some of the basics of what's going on when they use an AI tool. Like some don't even think about that it's going to a third-party server, right? Or it's like, oh, look, this tool is for free and all these other models are expensive, so I'm going to use the free one, right? So this type of like, with the speed coming, right? Like it seems like lots of people are just like getting washed away by the speed and not thinking about it that much anymore, right? So I think it's this like really knowledge of what's happening. Another good example of that speed and potentially accidentally being irresponsible is MCP servers right now, right? Totally exploded over the last month or two. People are cloning them left and right. A stranger wrote one. I'll just run it on my machine that has access to production and to all of our CI/CD systems, right? So yeah, and again, like a culture also like where you don't say when somebody does that, oh, how can you be so stupid? But this general like security culture where we don't blame each other, but we try to educate each other and accept that we also like make mistakes in these times, right? So I think all this culture stuff is super important. I think, especially in a hype like this that is so polarizing and fast.
Yeah, I really liked your you should accept or celebrate the skeptics as well as the enthusiasts. It made me think of an internal blog post where we were talking about as product managers how we should be using it. We've all been encouraged to share how we're using it every day. And a lot of the benefits were described as it made me faster, or it was a lot about speed. And somebody very thoughtfully asked in the comments, do we need more software? Like, do we need more software? Do we need to be faster? Or do we need to be more thoughtful? Do we need that software that we create to meet the demands of our customers in a better way, be more elegantly designed? And I think at initial blush, that felt very skeptical on a post that was very much encouraging everybody else to be really enthusiastic. But it's come back to me multiple times. It came back to me when you were talking about, I think that's where the curiosity is important, but it also is about, what is your intention here? What are your desired outcomes? It's not just for the sake of it. Obviously, as individuals, we all want to educate ourselves and grow and, do the best job that we can, but we need to think about, it's not just for the sake of it. Why am I choosing to do that? And I think that sort of rolls into individual responsibility as well, that you're not just getting on the bandwagon, but you're really being thoughtful about, is this improving me? Is this improving my organization? Is this improving my customers as well?
Yeah, all three of you are hitting on the core of this, which is that AI adoption or any kind of sea change event like this is largely a human phenomenon. It's largely a communication and cultural phenomenon. It involves a lot of practices and communication around being intentional with how you're using new things. It also creates this interesting dynamic that Birgitta called us out about. You get the skeptics and you get the enthusiasts, and the interplay between them is what ultimately innovates and builds on what we're doing. And there's space for both. There's a need for both. And the reason that both exist is because this tool has like a ubiquity to it. It's everywhere. It's hard to escape. And that means that it's something we have to pay attention to. So as folks are paying attention to AI and being mindful about how they're using it beyond just speed, that's where they find themselves starting to get charted across this type of matrix and start to see maybe the AI is doing more of the production process, like we saw right now in adoption. That seems to largely be the case around coding, right? We saw some like lagging indicators about, or rather some smaller indicators about like the process adoption, right? So it seems like the curve of this is going to look different for everybody. And the key is understanding what responsible means for you and your team. The key is being open and always communicating best practices, things that you're learning, pulling up the skeptics as well as dampering the enthusiasts. I think everyone has a role to play, no matter where you find yourselves on the level of expertise. There's always going to be something more to learn, and that's ultimately who this environment rewards, is the learners. You need to be a voracious learner. You need to be hungry for improving quality, and that's kind of ultimately how AI will amplify the work that you do. So this has been like a really great way of looking at how folks are kind of charting their progress. I want to take a moment just as we start wrapping up here, because I know we're getting close to time. I want to actually zoom in on one particular part of this SDLC map that we have of AI adoption. We've been talking about it as the river. I want to zoom in on this really shallow part, this who approved the merge. You can see that there's actually a very small amount of AI adoption at this particular point. It represents what you could think of as like the bottleneck in this ultimate process from end to end, because maybe in the steps before it, you have tools that are creating lots of code, having lots of touch points on your code base. But then it gets to a point where it needs to get reviewed by a human. It needs to get managed and added to a release. And ultimately, somebody needs to look at it and understand, was this good? Was it bad? Is this adding technical debt? Is there a security issue? And so it doesn't matter how fast you go at any of the part of the process before this. If you hit this part and everything comes to a grinding halt because you have one person reviewing all these PRs, or your system for getting things out to production, it has choke points. This is ultimately a place where you can really encounter problems in your adoption process. And this is something actually at LinearB that we've been thinking about a lot. At LinearB, we have a YAML-based pipeline as code automation framework that allows teams to look at all parts of this SDLC process from ideation to delivery, and not only understand how code moves through that process, but track it and also have automations that make an impact on that code based upon the things that are important to you. So as I mentioned, this is something that's like YAML based. You would write it directively based upon things that are important to you in your code base. And we've been looking at this in a lot of different use cases. Some of them involve tracking AI impact, whether that's automatically labeling PRs and commits that are maybe generated by certain code tools that you've added to your GitHub, or you're using in an IDE, like maybe you're using Cursor, right? As well as actually having generative AI impact on the pull requests themselves, maybe having a pull request that stays up to date with the changes that are happening in that PR and saves that developer time when writing a manual update or making sure all of their changes get accounted for. There's lots of use cases in this realm that we've been looking at, but one in particular, and this last one here, this auto-approve safe changes, is one that touches on that very shallow part of the river. And this is automatically approving PRs that are, they're safe according to what your organization determines. They could be things like docs or tests, or getting like a looks good to me from someone else who has authority over that part of the code base. But also on the flip side, you can have automations that put the brakes on things that come through that maybe need a closer look. Maybe it's touching a particularly sensitive part of your code base that 2 people or 3 people always typically review, and you want to make sure that they look at it. These are things that you can define in the type of automation framework with Gitstream on LinearB that I'm discussing, that would allow you to have a safer sense of how code is moving through your code base. And what it's going to do ultimately is reduce cognitive load for you and your developers. As we've discussed here today, there's a lot of stuff everyone's thinking about every day. We're all thinking of experimenting and going faster. So it's important that we stay true to quality and impact, and make sure that we're making the best software possible, because that's why we're all here. That's why we all want to build software, is we want to make the best possible stuff. And so this goes back to driving that quality. And so just in our last few moments here, I want to wrap things up with some closing thoughts from our panelists based upon the discussion we had, and all of the great points that we moved through. So I want to open it up to our panelists. If there's someone who wants to go first, maybe Suzie, since you were the first on our intro slide, if you want to kick off our closing thoughts, that'd be great.
Yes, my closing thoughts are probably all over the place, so I'll do my best. I think the main sort of thrust of this is that AI is becoming foundational to how we work, and the real opportunity is not like about replacing people. I think it's about amplifying individuals and amplifying creativity and improving that flow through the system that we talked about. And so I think the opportunity that we are taking at Atlassian, and that we encourage our customers to do with the tools that we are creating, but also, there's many tools to try, is to think about where your bottlenecks are, and where you want to improve and the outcomes that you want, and encourage your teams, like I said, to be curious and experiment and create better ways of working across that entire life cycle. So I think, if I want to call out one tool, if you are an Atlassian customer, I think Birgitta mentioned it earlier, we have our AI tool is called Rovo. And in particular, it's working across the entire life cycle. So there are Rovo features that help you with requirements breakdown, with task breakdown, with prioritization. We also have a PR review agent that helps you think about what to review when you look at a PR, all the way through to things like AI ops. So I think, think about your own organization, think where might be the best place to start, and just steadily think about those opportunities yourself, because this is the future. And I think it's someone asked in the chat, is a good opportunity to not do anything. Should we do nothing right now? And I think the answer is no. I think as you as an individual, you need to do something. And so just be cautious, just be thoughtful, be responsible. So yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
I'll build on that. from the chat and the responses, I can tell a lot of the audience present here, they seem to have embraced the AI tools, or at least the majority of them. So I would, my closing thought is for those who have not, who might be listening the recorded version. I would say, building on Suzie's point, I think embracing this shift in the software development, life cycle, that AI-driven software development life cycle, I think is a prudent thing at this point. But you don't have to really change everything you do overnight to really fit to this model. Like for instance, and that's where I put the plug in for the product that I work on. We have been very intentional in how we build Amazon Q Developer. Like, it doesn't really matter you are in the IDE, whether you are Visual Studio Code, JetBrains, or Eclipse, or you are terminal-based, or you're in GitLab and GitHub and other DevOps solution. We have tried to make sure that the capabilities are available in all these modalities. So you pick and choose, and you really figure out what is that use case that you want to bring this assistant in to help you with, whether it's generating unit tests, whether it's generating documentation, or just letting it run in a terminal on your desktop and, every now and then just ask it a question about the stuff that you're doing, as a lot of developers are doing with the QCLI. So I would just say that, like, don't stay on the sidelines and just watch, embrace it, but you don't have to really undo all your processes or really figure out anything from scratch. Just pick that one thing that you are comfortable bringing this assistant in, and just see how it transforms your productivity, or makes you more, I would say, move fast or better code, like whatever your output aspect is, I'll leave it to you. But just start somewhere, pick a use case, and then go. So that would be my suggestion based on what I'm seeing broadly in the industry.
Yeah, I was actually also going to build my closing thoughts on the comment in the chat that Suzie mentioned of, this genuine question, does anybody actually think it's maybe wiser to just wait a little bit, right? So Fred, your comment had a good impact on us for the closing thoughts. So I hear that sometimes I work for a consultancy, right? And I hear that sometimes from my colleagues that the client they work for is like, maybe, there's like so much going on. It's so fast, things are changing anyway. Let's just wait a little bit longer, right? And I usually say, fair enough, right? But I still like Suzie and Adnan as well. I wouldn't do it, like, multiple reasons. One is like it's super accessible and super easy to just dip in and dip out. So it's not like other technologies where often you step in and then you're kind of like, it's hard to get out again, or you have to do a big migration when you, like, even with coding assistants, you can use one this week or this month and then stop this. It's like streaming services, right? You stop your subscription and then move somewhere else. Your procurement department, if you work in a large enterprise, might disagree with me, but technically, if we leave that aside, right? So it's really easy to dip in and out and just do it for small things. And what's going on is actually there's like a real cognitive shift going on right now that we all have to go through, because especially as engineers, because this is not like the other tools that we've always used. And this is not like we cannot apply the same expectations to it. And like one day it solves like this amazing bug that we've had for 4 years or something. There was a viral Reddit post the other day. And then the next day it cannot even do the simplest thing for me, right? And the only thing that we can like understand that and build up an intuition when to reach for it and not reach for it is to use it. There's like just no other way, even more so than with other technologies. So for those two reasons, like that, it's like so accessible, and actually like it's not heavyweight, you don't lock yourself in, right? And then especially if you're in an organization that has that culture that I described before, right? Where there's also no peer pressure to either do nothing or do everything, where it's like a good experimentation culture. Like there's no reason not to use it already.
It's a really great way of framing it. And the idea of, can you do nothing? You probably can't afford to do absolutely nothing. And I think that there's so much that people can do that is transferable to the future. Everyone's afraid of this lock-in scenario, right? Of building something that's really precarious or reliant on one particular vendor and the environment's moving really fast. But there's a lot of fundamental principled things that we need to learn and understand and communicate that are going to be infinitely transferable in the future, to no matter how we ultimately ultimately use this tool. And that's the work that everyone really has to focus on. And that's what boils down to being a good learner and communicating successes and failures. I've seen a lot of great things in the chat just as we've been wrapping up here. Folks have really, it seems like the chat today has gone really well. I had a fantastic time and learned a lot, but I see so much enthusiasm in the chat from folks that are in the same exact scenario, and message after message here is, pick something and try to fix it and understand what went right and went wrong and communicate it. And ultimately, that's what it boils down to, are those fundamentals. So I think this has been a really well-rounded discussion, and I'm really appreciative of everyone for being here, our expert guests for taking time out of their day to be on our panel and chat with all of you, but also all of you in our audience who are here because you're learning and trying to be better and make better software for the world. Give yourself a round of applause too, because it takes a lot of work to show up to these conversations and be a part of them. And so I'm really, glad I was able to have this conversation with everybody. We want to continue it. So definitely reach out to us. We're all on social media. You can check out more information on everything we covered today on the LinearB website, as well as a link to go get that report. All of you should have a copy of the report, but if not, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to get you another one or send it to any of your coworkers, colleagues, anyone who might be curious. And be sure to check out LinearB if you're interested in tracking the impact and understanding how AI is impacting your software development lifecycle. Like I mentioned, we have lots of really great tooling, and there's a whole bunch of folks who'd be really excited to show it to you. So hoping to see some of y'all in our inbox after this, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.